everybody and welcome back. As always, my name is Addie and this is the Knits by AJ Knitting podcast and this is episode 72. It's lovely to be back it's lovely to be back chatting to you all. It has been a hot minute since I filmed one of these and my brief hiatus from filming was completely unintentional. So I was going to mention in my last video, but totally forgot that I was going to take a week off at the end of October. So the next one would have been late anyway. And that's because it was the half-term holiday. And so my daughter was at home with me and I just wanted to spend a bit more time with her and not stress about like filming and editing while she was at home. So I was going to be filming and editing and uploading last week. However, the last weekend of the half-term holiday, broke my finger whilst I was out walking the dogs. So I spent most of last week sat on the sofa feeling sorry for myself in quite a lot of pain. And yeah, it's been a bit of a miserable week for me. It really kind of affected me mentally as well, because I think not being able to do something that I love, like knitting, and also not being able to do like normal things as easily as I would usually, because I think I forget how much I use my left hand, despite the fact that I am not left-handed. So yeah, even things like doing the washing up, I can't do. Lifting things is difficult. It's really irritating. And it's kind of all been made a little bit worse by the fact that I have broken this finger before. And so I had surgery on it. And so I've got some metal work in there that is having to be checked over, which has also made it a little bit more painful. So yeah, it's been a lot and I'm kind of annoyed about it. And also, yeah, it just knocked me for six a little bit. But either way, I do still have a fair bit of knitting to talk to you about because I have everything that I had done previously. And then obviously I've not done a huge amount over the past week. So it kind of levels out anyway. I am also having to rethink a lot of the plans that I made for like the end of the year. So unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to do the usual like making of my daughter's Christmas jumper that I do most years. And yeah, a lot of my advent plans are having to be rejigged and I'm probably not going to be able to complete everything on my autumn making plans, which is really sad because I was doing really, really well at keeping up with it all. And yeah, it's just really irritating. But yeah, it is what it is. But anyway, should we get into some knitting? I have already delved into the whole like festive part of the year. My Christmas mug is out. I've put up some of our like Christmas garlands and things in the windows because I was feeling very down last week and decided that the house needed to be bright and sparkly. So yeah, I've not put my tree up. I will say that I've not put my tree up yet. And I've not done majority of the decorating. I've just put up some garlands because I thought that they would brighten up the house a little bit whilst it's very gloomy and grey. So yeah, anyway, let's get into some knitting. So I have 5 finished objects and then a couple of whips to talk about, but a couple of these finished objects are all ornaments that I was making for my daughter's ornament advent calendar. Now, sadly, this is probably going to be one of the things that I'm not going to be able to make a huge amount more progress on. I have made it to the point where I have made 12. So I have one for like every other day of her advent. And I think I might leave it at that for this year and then see if I can make some more over the next coming year. Because the thing with the ornaments is that the gauge is usually quite tight because you want quite a dense fabric so that the stuffing and everything doesn't show through, which I find very painful to knit at the moment. And also they are quite small and fiddly, which when you have a finger in a splint and you kind of need to be able to do like little fiddly bits on it, it's quite difficult. So I'm gonna have another relook through all of my patterns and everything, but unfortunately I might just have to stop at 12 for this year, which is very, very sad because I really, really wanted to get this done and I was really on track to getting it done. But either way, so I've made 3 ornaments over the past couple of weeks, and the first one is another one of the Puppy Christmas Ornament by Amy Gaines. Now this is the only paid pattern that I've used so far for these ornaments, and I am using all scrap yarns to do these, and I'm using a 3mm needle for most of them. And I'm knitting most of them up to a DK weight, so they're all a similar size. So I have already made one of these before, which is this one. So this was the first one that I made, and I made it to look like our golden retriever Biggs, who I'll put a picture of here because he's not in the room with me today. But yeah, this is the Biggs one. And then of course I couldn't just make a Biggs, I had to make a Ruffles as well, who is our English Cocker Spaniel, who I will put a picture of here. And this is what his ornament looks like. So I used a strand in the like kind of marzipan colour. I think it was probably Panilla by Phil Kalana. And then I used a strand of like a charcoal, I think it was leftovers from my E-Dale, so it was probably Phil Kalana Alva. So yeah, I used one strand of each for the body to give him a kind of mild look, because he's kind of like black and white and speckled when his hair isn't really long. He mostly just looks grey when his hair's quite long, but I thought I'd do the mild kind of speckled look. And then I used just the charcoal for the ears and the nose, and just the marzipan for the tail, because he does have a majority white tail. And then the back is just plain. And I did then use the tails from the ears and the nose when I was sewing them in to do a little bit of duplicate stitch over the eyes, because he does have black patches over his eyes. So yeah, that is the Ruffles ornament. It did turn up a little bit smaller than the Biggs ornament, but I think that's just because of the yarns that I used. I'd used the same needle size for both of them. But I think because I used 2 strands of the marzipan for the Biggs, I think it was just a little bit thicker than the marzipan and the Alva that I used for the Ruffles. And so yeah, I think it's turned out really, really nicely. I did alter the pattern. So the first one that I knit, I followed the pattern completely and I knit it flat and then had to seam it. And as I was doing that, I was thinking this would be so easy to just do in the round. So that's what I did for the Ruffles one. I knit the body in the round and then just seamed across the top with Kitchener stitch. And then I knit the tail in the round as well. And the ears are both knit flat, but I also did knit the nose in the round. And it was very, very easy to alter those to make it possible to knit it in the round. But yeah, I think it worked out really, really nicely, and I'm very, very happy with it, and I'm sure she will love it as well. So yeah, that is my puppy Christmas ornament. And then the next one I did was another free pattern. This is the Enchanted Mushroom by GHOTSTS, and I used, again, 3mm needles and all scraps. So I think that the top is the Noro Silk Garden Solo that I used for my Astrid pullover, and then the bottom is that marzipan Panilla again, which I think is left over from my Christmas jumpers last year. But yeah, so that looks like this. I have always found drops patterns quite hard to follow. I think it's just the format that they're written in, because they're not like written sort of one instruction and then another instruction and then another instructions. They're written in like paragraphs, and it's quite hard to kind of decode what you're doing. And so I messed up the increases that you do on the bottom. So I realise now that it told me that I was supposed to increase 8 stitches each round. But I read the first bit and then sort of thought, oh yeah, I know what I'm doing, don't need to worry about it. And I increased every 2 stitches across each round for the whole of the increases. So mine is probably quite a bit wider than the pattern suggested, but I'm not really all that mad about it. I just mirrored what I did for the increases, for the decreases for the top of the mushroom, and it's turned out perfectly fine. It looks the same as the picture, so I don't really think it matters that much. I think as long as you do your increases at the same rate as you do your decreases, then it probably should be fine. Yeah, it just wasn't written very clearly, and I probably didn't read it as well as I probably should have, knowing that I always manage to find drops patterns quite confusing. So yeah, mine is probably just a little bit wider, but I'm not really all that bothered by it. I think the green works really well as the top because there are these like tweedy flecks in the Noro. So it kind of gives it a little bit more of a natural look. I might go back in on this one and add like little bells or little beads on the top just to give it a little bit more of like a Christmassy feel. But I think these mushrooms are super duper cute. I do think that this was probably the like hardest on my hands when I was knitting it though. It was kind of probably because I ended up doing way more increases. So I had a lot of stitches on my needles and I knit it magic loop, but it just felt really harsh on my hands and just very tight to knit. So I think that's something I would bear in mind if I was to knit this again, to maybe do the increases properly so that I didn't have quite so many stitches, and maybe to use a thinner yarn. But I do think this has worked out really, really nicely. It holds a really nice shape. And yeah, it was just a very simple knit, and I would definitely recommend the pattern, but just read it a little bit more carefully than I did. So yeah, that is my Enchanted Mushroom. And then the last one that I did was another free pattern, and this is the Tiny Tree Sock by Summer Lee. And I think she did a whole thing of where she made it into a garland last year with little pom-poms, and it was very, very cute. And I thought, actually, you know what? I can't not make a little stocking to go on my daughter's Christmas tree this year. So I used a 2.5mm needle to knit this, and I used fingering weight yarn. So the yarn that I used was the West Yorkshire Spinners Signature 4-ply in the colour Hollyberry, which I've had hanging around in my stash for an absolute age, with the intention of making myself a pair of Christmas socks out of it. And I might finally do it this year if I can knit socks. The kind of angle that I have to have my hand at is the thing that I'm finding difficult at the moment, and also like the weight of projects. So maybe if I can knit socks, even if I have to knit them magic loop instead of knitting them on small circulars, then perhaps that might be a good thing for me to knit at the moment because it's not very heavy. But either way, this was so much fun. It was so quick. And yeah, I would definitely recommend it if you have never knit socks before, but you want to give it a go, because this was like, I'd say about 2 hours worth of work. It was very, very quick. So this is what it looks like. It is essentially just a tiny sock. If I can get it to focus, there we go. So you start with the ribbing, and then you knit the leg, and then you do the tiniest heel flap and gusset, and then you just knit the foot and then do the toe. Now mine's worked out really nicely in the way that the yarn has sort of self-patterned. So it is like a self-patterning yarn, the West Yorkshire Spinners Hollyberry. And it just worked out fully by chance that all of the ribbing was in red. And then there are a couple of rows of stockinette that are in the red as well. And then this like pattern section for the rest of the leg. And then the heel was in this green. And then more of the pattern section, a green stripe. And then the toe is in that pattern section again. It was just fully by chance that that happened. I did not plan it at all. It was just what the ball knit up as I was knitting. But I think this has turned out really, really nicely. As with all of Summer Lee's patterns, it was written really clearly. All of the instructions were really easy to follow. There's a couple of different options. So there's like a flea stitch, and then there's like a plain one. And I think there might be a couple of other options in there as well. But it's a really great free pattern. It's written to the same standard as the rest of Summer Lee's paid patterns. I would definitely recommend it. And I think like a whole little garland of tiny little socks would be so cute. You could even make them slightly bigger by knitting them in DK or Aran if you wanted a slightly bigger sock to go on a garland or something. But the tiny ones, there's just something about them that is just so sweet. And you could use any color combination. You could use up your scraps. I don't know how much this weighs. I could probably weigh it actually and pop it up on the screen, because it used like next to nothing and took next to no time. So yeah, I would definitely recommend the little tiny tree sock pattern by Summer Lee. It was just so much fun. And so yeah, that gives me 12 ornaments for my daughter's Advent, and they shall now live in this little box until I start putting them in her Advent calendar next month. And like I say, I would like to try and get some more done, but I'm not going to push myself at this point. I'd rather like let my finger heal and make them all for next year. And then she has 24 next year, but at least I have one for like every other day, and I can put something else in on the 12 days that I don't have an advent for. So yeah, that was my first 3 finished objects. The next one is an actual like proper full-on big project. So these are my spooky sock set socks from Stone Knits. I did the I Ain't Afraid of No Ghosts variant, and I used Rico's Socks Neon in the colour yellow, which is so obscenely bright, as my contrast colour. And then my main colour was the Knitcraft The Perfect Pair in the pastel stripe colourway. So I used a 2mm, a 2.25 and accidentally a 2.5mm needle to knit these. I didn't realise when I was knitting the heel that I'd accidentally picked up my 2.5mm needle instead of my 2.25mm needle. So the heel was knit on a slightly larger needle than I intended to, but they still fit fine. If anything, I think it was a happy accident that I did that, because they were a little bit tight over the top of my foot. They seem to be fine now that I've worn them a couple of times, but when I first put them on, they were quite tight and the colourwork was getting quite stretched. So I think having that extra space from using the larger needle on the heel actually worked out quite well to give me that little bit of extra space. Otherwise, I think they would have been too tight. So yeah, it worked out quite nicely. But here is what they look like. I can't remember where I was in these when I last showed them. I might have been on sock 2 or just about to start sock 2. But yeah, this is what they look like. I absolutely love these. I wore these on Halloween to take my daughter trick-or-treating, and they were such good fun. They were really bright, and yeah, I just really like how sort of different they are from a normal Halloween sock. They are obscenely bright. Are they getting completely blown out? I can't tell. But yeah, the pattern was really easy to follow. They were really, really fun to knit up. I managed to memorize the pattern, so I didn't actually have to look at the chart too much, especially on sock 2. And yeah, I am really happy with how they've turned out. So I did my rib slightly differently to the pattern. I did a 2x1 rib on 63 stitches instead of the 1x1 rib that was recommended in the pattern. And I did that on the 2mm needle, and it has worked out really, really nicely. It fits my leg really well. It's very stretchy and it looks neat, which is the main thing for me. And then I decreased down to size 1 for the leg. And then I did increase back up to size 2 for the heel to give me a little bit of extra space. And then I went back down to size 1 for the foot. And then I just did a standard wedge toe. I think my wedge toe is slightly different to the one that's in the pattern for these socks. I do the wedge toe in the majority of Summer Lee's patterns, like in the Cuff Club, which is slightly different to what Charlotte Stone writes in her patterns. But I just went on autopilot for the toe and they fit perfectly fine, so it's not really too much of an issue. I did have to do an extra like half a chart repeat just before the toe, just to make them a little bit longer. And actually I think it's quite fun just having these little ghosts like popping out of the toe, because my foot was slightly longer than just the 3 pattern repeats that are recommended in the pattern. But yeah, I really, really love these. I think they are so much fun. And I would definitely knit another pair from this sock set. So there's another one with witches, I think, in this one. I do have another pair of socks from Charlotte Stone on the needles at the moment. I definitely knit more of her patterns. I'm not sure why I don't knit more colourwork socks, to be honest, because I do really enjoy knitting them. And these, like I say, were just no different. So yeah, the yarns were both really nice to work with. They're quite similar in texture. They're not like a super soft merino sock. They're definitely a little bit more rustic. They both feel very similar to a like BFL sock. Specifically like the West Yorkshire Spinners signature 4-ply. They feel very, very similar to that. And So I think these will be quite hard wearing because all of the socks that I've had that I made out of West Yorkshire Spinners or a BFL sock yarn have been really hard wearing, slightly more hard wearing than my merino ones, which I would have kind of predicted, to be honest, because they weren't as soft. So these should hold up really well. And I'm not that kind of person that only wears Halloween socks on Halloween. I'll probably wear these all year round. I wear my other ones that I made from the October chart of the Colourwork Cuff Club by Summer Lee. I wear those fairly often. I'm not an only wear festive socks in that specific festive season kind of person. I will just pick a pair of socks and just shove them on. So yeah, I'm probably going to be wearing these quite often because they are so cozy. I'm one of those people that constantly has cold feet and hands. My circulation is not great. And so yeah, these were super duper cozy, and I will definitely be knitting another pair of Colourwork socks fairly soon when I'm able, so that I can have more cozy socks, because they are definitely much more snuggly than my like stockinette socks. So yeah, those are my spooky sock set socks, and I cast these on October the 12th and I cast them off on October the 28th, so they took me a grand total of 16 days to knit, so not very long at all. And then cost wise, so the Rico Socks Neon costs £8.50 a ball. The Knitcraft the Perfect Pair cost £4.50 a ball. And so with the pattern, which cost £5.66, but you do get two different like Colourwork socks in that pattern because it's a pattern set. So it's quite good value anyway. So the total for these socks is £18.66, which is not too shabby, to be fair. This Knitcraft the Perfect Pair is really good value for money, because I will definitely be able to get at least one more pair of socks out of this from the leftovers. So yeah, that was my I Ain't Afraid of No Ghost socks. So my last finished object is a pair of fingerless mittens, and it was a pattern that was recommended to me by one of you guys back on my autumn making plans when I asked for suggestions for fingerless mitten patterns. And so I have made a pair of the Pioneer gloves by Kelly McClure. And McClure? I think I've written an R. I can't read my own handwriting now. So yeah, like I say, I used a strand of Knitting for Olive Cotton Merino in the colour Lime Yellow, and I also used a strand of Fibre Space Cumulus in the colour 935, which were a perfect match for each other. And these are a pair of like all over rib fingerless mittens with a little like rolled edge at the wrist. And I absolutely love these. I would definitely make these again. They only come in adult sizes, but I think I might try and like modify the pattern and make a little pair for my daughter, who is 5, so she has much smaller hands than I do. Having said that, I have very small hands, and I had to alter this pattern. So I knit the smallest size, which is size small, and I did go down a needle size to a 2.5 millimeter needle. Yeah, 2.5 millimeter needle. And this pattern is written to be just knit with fingering weight yarn, and obviously I was using fingering weight and fluff. And although I did get gauge, I still had to take stitches out because my hands are quite small. And so I took 10 stitches out of the stitch count for each of the gloves, and actually they fit perfectly fine. And that did also mean that I had to do a little bit of alteration of like how many stitches I had for the hand when I was doing the thumb increases, because there are some increases for the thumb. And all I did was keep the thumb stitch count exactly the same and just take like 10 stitches off of the like rest of the sort of wrist and hand circumference. No, not circumference, stitch count. And yeah, it's worked out perfectly fine. I did make my wrist section a bit longer. I doubled the amount of rows that I did for the wrist, just so I'd get a little bit more coverage, so that if like my sleeve falls down, then I've still got a little bit of fabric there to keep my wrist warm. And I also altered my increase rate for the thumb because my row gauge was a little bit short, I thought, and I kind of was watching how far I was going to get if I did the regular increase rate for the thumb, and it was going to make my increases stop like here, and I didn't really want that. I wanted them to stop just as I got to the thumb. So instead of doing 1 round between the increased rounds, I did 2. And yeah, I don't really think you could notice, to be perfectly honest. I also didn't do the pickup stitches for the thumb. I did them on the first glove that I knit and then ended up pulling it back and re-knitting them without those pickup stitches, just with the stitches that you like put on hold at the thumb. And then I just sewed up the little gap that I had using the end. And it's worked out perfectly fine for me. They fit really, really nicely. I think when I had those extra 5 stitches in there, it was just too much. And I had too much fabric for the thumb and it was just very, very baggy. And it kind of got in the way when I was trying to use my hand because there was so much extra fabric there. So yeah, this is what they look like on. They have come in handy over the past couple of weeks. Because I've had to like keep my hand elevated, and that means like obviously when I'm walking around, my hand has been getting really quite chilly. They have really helped to kind of like keep my hands warm and everything. And I really like the fact that I've still got loads of movement in them because the rib fabric is very stretchy. I still have full movement of my hands without them being too kind of tight, like around my fingers. I made sure to do the bind off really, really loose so that I would be able to like fully move my fingers about. But yeah, these are a really, really great pattern. They fit really, really nicely. It's really easy to adjust it if you need to. And yeah, I am just really happy with how they've turned out. I'll definitely be making this pattern again. So yeah, I'm very, very happy with how they've turned out. I used like no yarn as well. So I used 21 grams of the Knitting for Olive and 17 grams of the Fibre Spates. So they weigh next to nothing. I can barely notice that they're in my pockets. And yeah, I'm just really, really happy with how they've turned out. So yeah, those are my Pioneer knits. And I cast these on the 23rd of October and I cast them off on the 26th of October. So it took me a grand total of 4 days to knit. And cost-wise, the pattern is free, which is really, really nice. The Knitting for Olive Cotton Merino cost me £9 and the Ball of Fibre Spates Cumulus cost me £7.25. So the total for these mittens was £16.25. However, I think I could probably get another pair out of the yarn that I've got left. So yeah, they were very, very economic on yarn as well. Okay, so that brings me to my whips. And my first whip that I have to talk about is my Gr8 Gingham Raglan by Jessie Maed Designs. Now, I kind of feel like this pattern is just doomed for me now. Not this pattern, sorry. This project is doomed because obviously I put it away for the summer and it's been on the needles for a very long time. And now I was so close to getting this finished before I broke my finger. And now I'm finding it quite hard to work on because of the weight of it. So I've had to put it down again until I have a little bit more strength in my hand to be able to knit on it. But I've made so much progress on this over the past couple of weeks. So oh, the marker's on the back. Bear with. So before I film this, so last time I filmed this, I was here. And now, obviously, I have finished the body and I have joined the sleeves and I've done all of the yoke decreases. And I've also added in some short rows and I've started the neckband. And that's probably just going to be how it's going to have to sit, at least for the next couple of weeks, whilst I kind of develop a little bit more strength in my hand and I'm able to like hold things up for a little bit longer and I get a little bit more movement in there. But I was so close. I think if I hadn't have had the broken finger incident, then I probably would definitely have this finished by the time I filmed this video. And it's very, very annoying because I really kind of wanted to wear this like over the festive period, but it's just not, it's not to be. And that is fine. I will just have to just carry on when I can. But I was really, really enjoying working on this when I was able to work on it. So the body was fairly straightforward to knit. It was just carry on with the colour work. And then I obviously joined the body and the sleeves and started the decreases, which are done using a central double decrease, which I really, really love the look of. I think having it done in just the solid colour working its way up really like makes the decreases look super duper clean, especially where you've got bits of the chart kind of like sort of blending into each other. It just allows it to look so much cleaner than having like 3 bits of one chart and then 3 bits of the other chart, and it kind of looking a bit funny because it's like joining at an angle. It just breaks it in such a nice way and gives it such a clean finish. So because I did my decreases in the red, which is actually technically like my contrast color, I then decided to go up and do my neckband in the red as well. And I've pretty much decided now that I'm going to do the neckband and the ribbing on the bottom of the body in the red, and then I'm going to do the ribbing on the sleeves in the pink, and just sort of change it up a little bit and have them not match all the way through the jumper. And yeah, that's what I've decided to do. So I did add in my own short rows as well to this pattern, because there are not short rows added into the actual pattern. And I did see on quite a few project pages how it sits quite high at the front neck, and I did not want that. I wanted it to sit higher at the back than at the front, because I find it really distracting and irritating if I have something too high on my neck. So yeah, I added in short rows. Essentially all I did was I stopped 3 decreases before the end of the decreases in the pattern, and I worked to the center 5 stitches of the front. So the front on mine, the middle is it that red one? I can't. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, so the middle of mine was this red square here. And so I stopped at the last stitch before that, and then I worked back round, and then I stopped here again, and then I did 5 stitches either way, and I did that 3 times on each side. So I ended up with 6 short rows, and I had to put the decreases in at the same time. So it worked out that I would decrease on the, so when I was going around the right way, the knit way, I would decrease on the knit rounds, and then I was going round, when I got past and went round the wrong way, I would have to decrease on the purl rounds, which is a little, I'll try and write it out like in my Ravelry project page as best I can, but yeah, it was quite complicated. But it meant that I could keep my colour work going in pattern without having to sort of disrupt it and then have to like duplicate stitch over the top of it. It did mean having to do colour work on the wrong side, which was absolutely fine. It really didn't make too much of a difference to me, but I know a lot of people don't like doing colour work on the wrong side. Because it was only 2 colours, it was very easy to do. And it has allowed for a little bit of a raised section at the back, so that I think my collar is going to sit just a little bit higher at the back than at the front. I'm also intending to do a folded collar on this instead of just a single collar. And I think, to be honest, if you were just doing a single collar and not a folded collar, you could probably just do short rows in the ribbing for that collar, and then you wouldn't have to do the colour work on the wrong side or muck around with your decreases at all. So yeah, there's always that option, but I decided to do it this way because I wanted a folded collar. So yeah, it worked out really, really well, I think. I need to try this on. I will try it on in a second, so you can kind of see how it's fitting. And yeah, so then I just did 1 knit round in the red to resolve the short rows, and then I've done standard 1x1 rib instead of half twisted rib, because I despise knitting half twisted rib, and yeah, I just prefer the look of standard 1x1 rib. So that is how far I've got with this so far. I still have all of the ribbing to do on the sleeves and the body, and yeah, it's just going to take me a little bit longer than I even thought it would when I repicked this up last month. So yeah, but I will try this on so you can kind of see what it's looking like. I've not tried this on since I started doing the neckband either, so I guess we're going to see what it looks like on for the first time together. Oh my god, there's a dog under the chair. Sorry, Ruffles. Okay, that one. My god, putting on colour work is even more difficult than putting on normal things when you've got your finger in a splint. Like, just every single float just got attached to my splint. Okay, I'm in. Have I actually got it on the right way around? That would be really awkward if I haven't. Yeah, I think I have. Okay. Okay, so this is what we're looking like fit-wise. Obviously, this is unblocked, and I think that the yoke is going to come down a fair bit, and the neck is not going to sit quite so high, because I think it is sitting really high at the moment, which is kind of worrying. I think because I'm not going to be able to work on this for the next couple of weeks, what I might do is block this today and see if this yoke does come down at all, because it has got a lot of movement in there. I think it's more likely to sit like that, which is quite wide still, but we shall see. I think that my short rows have worked okay, because it is still much higher at the back than it is at the front. I'm kind of wondering if it's because I haven't finished the ribbing that it's looking a bit funny. I wonder if once I finish the rib, it will sit a lot more kind of neckliney. I think it's just flaring because the rib is obviously not finished and needs a little bit more work. But I really like the length. I really like how much ease there is in here as well. I think that's obviously going to grow a little bit when the colour work all relaxes in blocking as well. The sleeves are a nice length. We all know how much I like a long sleeve. So yeah, I am happy with this. I'm just kind of struggling to see how it's going to look once all the ribbing is on. And I'm wondering if maybe a like mid-project block might help. But other than that, I am really liking how it looks. I like how the colour work looks. I like how the colours work with my skin tone and everything. I think, oh, I've moved my chair. Hang on. There we go. I think it is a really, really nice jumper. I'm just struggling to think how it's going to look once all of the ribbing is finished. And I think blocking might give me a little bit more of like an accurate representation of how it might end up looking, especially with the neckband, because it obviously needs to kind of move about a bit more. I think that's probably more likely where it's going to sit. And then obviously I'm going to do the neckband. Yeah, we shall see. But I am very happy with how it's looking. It's just, I think because it's bottom up as well, usually when I would knit a raglan, I probably would have the neckband already done by this point. And so I don't often try them on at this point with all the weight from the body on there. But yeah, I do really like how this fits. I really like how warm it is, how cozy it is. And yeah, it's just making me more disappointed in the fact that I'm not being able to work on it at the moment. But I'll get back to it and then it'll be finished whenever it's finished. So yeah, so that is my progress on my Gr8 Gingham for now. I cast this on March the 27th, so it has currently been on my needles for 230 days. And maybe I'll have it finished by the end of the year. Who knows? We shall see. Okay, so that was my Gr8 Gingham Raglan, and that brings me to my final whip of today. And this has kind of been my like only project for the past 10 days or so. It's been my like comfort knitting, and I'm so glad to have it to knit on at the moment, and that it's a really easy pattern that I can just dip in and out of. So this is the Stay Extra Toasty scarf by VERONIKA LINDBERG, or VERONIKA. And this was probably the only thing on my autumn making plans that I was actually going to be able to knit on, because it's knit flat, it's very, very lightweight, and it's a very kind of easy stitch pattern that's very easy to memorize and also very easy to knit. And it's not too much of the same thing in a long period of time. So my finger is able to kind of like not be in the same position all the time, which makes it ache and hurt quite a lot. So yeah, it's been like the perfect project for me for right now. Are you all right, buddy? Okay. Ruffles is in the room and has found himself uncomfortable. I don't know. Oh, okay. You're going to lie down like that? Good boy. So I'm using a combination of two different yarns to knit this. So my main strand is Biche and Bouche Le Petit Lambswool in the colour white. And I'm holding it with a strand of the Chroma Nima Lace Weight Cashmere in the colour Indigo Spot. which just looks like this. And for full transparency, I didn't purchase the Chrome and Nema. It was gifted to me in a goodie bag from the East Anglia Yarn Festival when I was an official podcaster for them earlier in the year. I did a vlog of the time that I was there, which I will link down below if you guys wanted to go back and watch it in case you were considering coming to the 2026 East Anglia Yarn Festival. So yeah, for full transparency, this was gifted to me. I did not purchase it myself. But I did purchase the Biche and Bouche Le Petit Lambswool. So this scarf is like the larger version of the Stay Toasty scarf. I think they're both knit up at the same gauge, but one is obviously larger than the other. And it's an all over garter and rib knit scarf that's kind of in, well, it's sort of in the actual pattern is in a triangular shape, but mine isn't because I had to make a little bit of an alteration. But it's knit up at a DK weight gauge, and I think the recommended yarn is like 2 strands of lace weight held together, or 1 strand of DK, and I'm using 1 strand of fingering and 1 strand of lace. So my gauge is ever so slightly off, but as it's a scarf, I didn't really think it was going to matter. I was just going to knit to the point that I wanted to knit to because I do have extra yarn, which is fine. So I have gone up a needle size. I am knitting mine on a 4mm needle. I think that the recommended is either a 3.5 or a 3.75. I can't quite remember. And for some reason I have not written that down. So yeah, I did go up a needle size because I was using a slightly thinner yarn, and I don't think that I would like to go up any further to like a 4.5 or a 5, because I think then my fabric would just be really gapey. So I'm just dealing with the fact that my gauge is slightly off, but like I say, I have extra yarn, so it doesn't really matter. Now, I did wonder how this cashmere was going to knit up, because when it was in the skein, it was like majoritarily this kind of greyish off-white with one big dollop of indigo in the middle of it. And then obviously when I've wound it up, it's kind of sort of dispersed into the skein a little bit more. And then when it's knit up, it looks like this. So it just looks like speckles. I did wonder if it was going to be more like stripes or if it was going to be speckles, but it has come out more kind of speckly. And I really, really love it. It kind of almost gives the look of tweed without it being a tweed. And I think it's working really, really well with that strand of the lamb's wool. So as you can see, I have made a fair bit of progress on this. I guess this is what happens when I only knit on one thing over 10 days instead of knitting on like multiple different projects. But yeah, this has definitely been my like comfort knitting. So you start with like an I-cord at the end, and then you start doing some increases to grow the width, and you carry on doing increases until you're at the full width with the I-cord on either side. And this is kind of where I deviated. So I ended up adding in a fair few rows of like just the pattern without any increases in the center. So mine's going to be sort of more like skinny growing and then sort of plateau and then decrease on the other side, which is absolutely fine. I'm not bothered by it. I like the width that I'm going to have in the center, and I would rather have that extra bit of length than have a scarf that's kind of an odd length that I don't really wear very often. So I've ended up with, I think I'll have like 26 pattern repeats without any increases or decreases in the center, because I just carried on until I got to the point where I finished my first ball of the Biche and Bouche lamb's wool, and I've just started my second. So my center point is this marker, and I'm just going to knit exactly the same with the decreases on the other side. And then I think I should get some growth with blocking because of the garter stitch. And then I think the rib is probably going to want to grow widthwise as well. So I'm just going to see what happens in blocking, but I'm happy with the kind of like halfway point that I've got to at the moment. If I take my mic off, then I can kind of show you what it's going to look like ish once it's finished. Okay, so this is what it looks like once I've kind of like put the needle sort of at the center of the back of my neck. So this is kind of where it's going to sit, and then the other side will obviously go round again. So it's going to be a fairly long scarf, and it's going to give me a really nice, like, cozy sort of bit of bulk at the neck, but also I could wear it like just wrap around once or anything, because actually, having thought about this, this is going to now be wrapped twice, so I'm going to have plenty of length. I'm not really sure what my problem was. I'm not sure why I was stressing. I could have just wrapped it around once and it would have been fine. I don't know. I think I've just had a massive panic over nothing. Oh well. But anyway, I'm going to have a really nice, warm, cozy scarf to get me through the like colder side of the winter. And I'm very much looking forward to it. This is so soft and squishy. There's no itch factor. It just feels really nice and sort of smooth and warm and cozy. And I'm very much looking forward to having this as a finished object. It's just so cozy. I just love it. So yeah, this is what it's going to look like. I think having the blue in there just gives it a little bit extra sort of depth and interest than just having a plain white scarf. And I just really, really like the little blue flecks in there. I think it's a really, really lovely fabric. Yeah, I really, really like how this is turning out. I really like how squishy the fabric is with the mixture of the rib and the garter. It was also really easy to work out where to put your increases, because all of the increases are done in the same place in the pattern repeat, and it's easy to see them and work out where you are in the pattern and when you've got to do your next increase, which I know a lot of people have said that it's quite difficult in the Sophie scarf because of like the fact that it's garter and everything, you can't see your increases and that kind of thing. This is really simple to do. And yeah, it's just been the project that I needed at this point in time. And I'm now whacking my mug with my needles. So yeah, I'm really, really enjoying this. I don't think it's going to take me too long to finish, to be honest, because I am now kind of like on the home stretch. I'm in the widest point, and then I'm going to be decreasing back down the other side. So yeah, hopefully I will have this finished fairly soon. So I cast this on November the 3rd, and it's currently been on my needles for 10 days. So not too shabby for 10 days work with a broken finger, to be perfectly honest. I'm very happy with that. And I think that's everything I have to talk through today. I did think that the postman might arrive whilst I was filming this with my advent from Loom, but he has not arrived. So hopefully that will be arriving either later today or tomorrow. But yeah, I'm very excited for Advent season. I have decided that this year I'm not gonna try and work with my Advent as I open it. I was kind of thinking that I probably wouldn't do that this year, and then obviously after I broke my finger it kind of cemented the fact that I'm just going to try and take it easy this year and not put too much pressure on myself in December to try and knit through my Advent as I open it. I do have a second Advent that I got from Spin and Blether, which is a self-striping sock Advent where you get 2 50-gram skeins of self-striping and some contrast for your heels, toes, that kind of thing. So I might try and knit on that, but I'm just really going to try and take it easy for December this year and just enjoy it. And yeah, just really kind of take a step back when it comes to trying to knit through my Advents as I open them. So yeah, I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode. Thank you so much for sticking with me through my brief hiatus from uploading YouTube videos. I am now back, and I will have to try and figure out a way to create content whilst navigating the good old broken finger. How many times have I mentioned it in this video? Far too many already. But yeah, I would love to know what you guys are working on, what you guys have got planned for the next couple of weeks as we near the most festive month of the year. And yeah, as always, if you've enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a like. And if you're new here, then please do consider subscribing. And I will catch up with you all in my next video. Happy making!